Welcome back to the Sports Wrap, joined now by Tim Britton, the Red Sox beat reporter for the Providence Journal. It is baseball season. The truck left Fenway today en route to Fort Myers. So much to get to, an eventful offseason for sure when you talk about David Price, Hanley Ramirez moving to first. What is your big storyline as you head down to Florida next week?
Well, I think the biggest one is how is Hanley going to handle first base? Because that's the great unknown.
Right.
From the day Dave Dombrowski came in, we knew a lot of things were going to happen with this team in the offseason. Price is obviously the big one. They've revamped the bullpen. But if Hanley Ramirez can't take care of first base, that affects, when he's bad in left field, that's one thing. That's only affecting balls to left field. If he's bad at first base, that's every ground ball. That's to third, short, second. It can undermine the confidence of your fellow infielders. It could be really bad if he doesn't get a handle on it. They're confident, but kind of cautiously optimistic about him. So we're going to see a lot in spring of Hanley.
And we know he lost some weight, but he played some shortstop. He's been in the infield. But what do you think will happen with Hanley at first? Does this end well?
I'm not sure. There's reasons to be optimistic, and the infield experience, he wasn't a great shortstop, but he was a defensible shortstop in a way he wasn't in left field. And we saw he couldn't really judge fly balls in left field. That was a big issue. I think he'll field ground balls fine. I think he'll learn how to field throws in the dirt. It's kind of, it'll take time for him to get the footwork down. I'm interested to see whether he puts in the time in a way maybe he didn't last year. Makes the cutoff throws easier for people, knows his responsibilities. You've got a lot more responsibilities at first than you do in left. So I think it's really up in the air, and we'll see how Brian Butterfield works with him in spring training.
That'll be interesting to see for sure. All right, David Price got a boatload of money to come to Boston in the offseason. Two-part question. One, obviously the contract, these long-term deals financially don't usually make sense on the back end, but did the Red Sox overpay for him, A? And B, do you think Price is the bona fide ace they need this year?
I think he is the bona fide ace, and I don't really think that they overpaid for him, because you look at the market for pitching, just a couple days later, Zach Greinke got an even bigger deal from the Diamondbacks with some deferred money in there. But Price was kind of in line with what I expected him to get at the start of the offseason. I would have said between $210, $220 million for 7 years. So it sounds outrageous, I know. But that's kind of what the market is for a frontline guy, and he's been as good as, he's as good a free agent pitcher as there's been basically in the last 6 or 8 years, maybe CC Sabathia after 2008, the last guy this good to hit the market. So, he's your opening day guy. He's a guy you're going to count on for more than 200 innings, 220, 230 innings, and a guy who's going to go 7 innings deep, rest your bullpen on certain days, and set a tone for the rest of your rotation. Maybe work well with some younger guys. You've got some young left-handers coming up, Eduardo Rodriguez, and then Henry Owens and Brian Johnson behind him. One thing we've heard a lot this offseason is how good a teammate Price is. So I think the Red Sox are banking on that, helping them out too.
Yeah, we know we got to Fort Myers early, and this time last year the Red Sox had 5 aces, which of course didn't come out very well. All right, David Ortiz, 1 year left. It's the farewell tour for Big Papi. Does he ultimately give you 30 and 100 again this year? And do we see the same thing Mariano Rivera and Derek Jeter received, which is a gift in every city?
It's kind of become a tradition in the American League East, hasn't it, with those guys? I think we'll see. I assume there'll be some pressure on other franchises to recognize him after what they did for Rivera and Jeter. And when it comes to 30 and 100, he reminds me a little of Rivera, where so many years you were like, well, this is probably the year where it doesn't work out for him. And I remember, last year, early in June, it was that's what we were talking about. Maybe this is the end of David Ortiz, and he has 30 home runs in the last 4 months of the year. So I don't want to bet against him at this stage of his career, because he's proven me wrong several times the last couple of years. So I'd say, why not do it again?
Yeah, and he's a guy who usually comes up in the clutch moment, so this will be his final season. My last question for you, all things considered, can you give me a grade for the Red Sox offseason?
All things considered, I think you've got to give them, I don't want to go A. I don't want to grade on a curve. But I'd say B plus A minus. They went out and they got Price, which was, that was the top priority. Dave Dombrowski said it the day he was hired. The top priority is a #1 starter, and he got who I thought was the best #1 starter on the market in Price. They paid a hefty price for him, but not so ridiculous in retrospect. And then they beefed up the bullpen, maybe even more than I expected, with Craig Kimbrell and Carson Smith. There are questions about, maybe an A or an A+ offseason would have been unloading Hanley Ramirez and finding yourself a longer-term solution at first base. But they've fixed their weaknesses, I think, enough to be right there in contention in the American League East. I've said that before, said that last year, so we'll see how it plays out. But I think they've done pretty much what I expected them to do coming into the winter.
All right, Tim Britton, good stuff. You're going to come back tomorrow. We're going to talk about the young outfield, projections for the AL East, and whether or not the Red Sox make it back to the playoffs. Much more from the Sports Wrap coming up right after this.